And in 1996, Blizzard acquired Condor Games, which had been working on Diablo for Blizzard at the time, and Condor was renamed Blizzard North, and has since become basically the developer for all the Diablo games, from Diablo, Diablo 2, and its expansion pack. And Blizzard launched their online gaming service, Battle.net, in the early of 1997, which was Diablo 1 was one of the first games to feature on its system. Of course, this would become basically their whole network for games to come, including Diablo 2 and StarCraft, which made Blizzard probably a household name more than any other series I can name. Despite this, there was hints early on in 2001, I think it was the E3 of 2001, that they had mentioned that they were working on an MMO for Warcraft, even though it would be several years later before it was actually released. Matter of fact, we got Warcraft 3, which was the official sequel to Warcraft 2, hence the extra number, Reign of Chaos, with its own Frozen Throne expansion pack. And then November 2004, on the 10th anniversary of Blizzard, they released World of Warcraft. And that basically changed MMOs forever. And it's been pretty much king of the hill ever since. Now, we've seen a few of their games back on the consoles again. Diablo and Warcraft 2, I know, were put on the PS1 and maybe for the Saturn. One of those things I should have looked up. Yes, Ed.
And StarCraft was on the Nintendo 64.
It was.
I did play it. It wasn't really that good, largely because of the controls. I've never actually played a console RTS game that I enjoyed because of the controls.
Once you get behind an RTS with a mouse, it changes things.
It would be like trying to play a first-person shooter on an iPod.
Don't give them ideas.
Oh, gosh. Activision merged with Blizzard. The deal was actually announced on December the 2nd of 2007, and they actually finished the merger on July 9th, 2008. They thought that the two companies would, if you put these two companies with the huge games together, that it would just become huge. And it has. It's a huge place.
I just remember people freaked out.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, Activision had a lot of change of hands in the upper areas. So there was a lot of changes in the company during that time, and a lot of them were debatably not so hot. I won't name names. Most of you already know who I'm talking about. But yes, it was about that same time that Burning Crusade came out, and Wrath of the Lich King a year later. And then Cataclysm in 2010. Now this was a gutsy move. And I say that because there's a lot of games that will gleefully throw out expansions and DLC all day long. But few companies would have the guts to take their entire game and alter it. It was a graphics overhaul, it was a system overhaul, it was even a world overhaul, where it was literally a cataclysm. They had volcanoes, they had earthquakes, they had a giant dragon scorching the planet. It was madness, madness, I tell you. So it was successful too. There was a lot of people that came back to the game about that time to see what had changed, and they kept with it. And even after all of that, because of so many games, largely the competitors that it's had over all these years that just could not compete in the subscription market, WoW is also free to play for the first 20 levels. Just go download the client, get yourself a Battle.net account. Granted, it doesn't take that long to get through those 20 levels anymore. It's a lot less of a chore than it used to be, which is, for the most part, a good thing, but I think the game moves so much faster now that there may be a lot less a person has to do to actually see a lot of the rewards, which is actually, once again, something backwards to a lot of MMOs. They want you to spend as much time as possible on the game. But I think WoW is also one of the first to realize that when they get to level 80, they quit because they don't have enough to do anymore. So WoW is really focused on having a lot of in-game content with their raids, with special achievements, their events and such for stuff.
There's also achievements for doing all of the quests in specific zones as well. And if you do all of them, then you get a title reward called Lore Master. So there's incentives to go back and do this stuff. So I don't think they have issues with helping you get caught up with your friends because of that.
So that really catches us up to the modern era of Mists of Pandaria, which was released just this last week. I have to say, if there's one thing that WoW really did for the MMO market, is that before it came along, games were still kind of running a very Dungeons & Dragons style game setup. And WoW took everything it had learned from Diablo and simplified the gameplay, not ridiculously, but enough for just about anybody could pick up, learn it, play it. While it's hard to give WoW a lot of the credit for being the originators of a lot of these ideas, they were the first ones to put them in effect. And it's been pretty obvious because of how many millions. There's a small country's worth of subscribers at any given year, despite how many it has lost in the last couple of years. WoW has still been undoubtedly unchallenged.
Yeah, you can't take on WoW. It's impossible.
Mm,
Any MMO that I've seen
like
try has failed miserably.
And it's not even that all of them were bad. Some tried to be a little too much like WoW. I remember the Lord of the Rings played so much like it. It was almost embarrassing, but it made it a fun game. It was an enjoyable experience for the short time I was on there. And it was basically like WoW was the cartoon version of Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings was the Lord of the Rings to Lord of the Rings, and it was just a matter of preference there for a while. But I think ultimately WoW had a lot more to offer the players, even though Lord of the Rings had probably debatably a better story. Now, I'm not any scholar at the Warcraft lore, and it's also really hard to talk too much about Warcraft, or StarCraft for that matter, without noting how much Blizzard, and I'm not going to say steal. A lot of people say steal. I say homage. They know where they come from. They know they're Lord of the Rings fans. They know they're Dungeons & Dragons fans. They know they're Warhammer fans. They know this. They accept it. They love it. It's because they love it. It's not they're just taking these ideas and symbolisms and this artwork and putting it out there and calling it their own. They took something and made it their own because it was a creative factor of something they really put heart into. And that's something you can say about most of Blizzard's games. I think that's why they've been such a successful company.
And that's the large thing about them too, is that they really do care about more than just making money. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, back to the merger just real quick, when that happened, Activision is known for taking video games and just chunking them out really quickly.
Oh, yes.
Which is something we talked about last week. A lot of people were afraid that the quality of World of Warcraft, such as it is, would go down when they merged with Activision, and that hasn't really happened. They actually recently said that when they talk to Activision, when they're pitching their new stuff, they're like, the most Activision ever does is ask why they're doing what they're doing and what direction they see going on from that, stuff like that. As far as I know, is from what they've said, Activision doesn't try to control them and has no intention to.
Being a merger, they're more partners in the company than a lot of what Activision has owned over the years, which is Call of Duty surviving simply because its popularity hasn't died down yet. But eventually it may get so saturated that it's going to go the same route as Guitar Hero. So if we start seeing these month after month of expansions and DLC, and we've seen quite a few map packs in the past for these games and with them coming out every year. I know I just got through saying this about fighting games. They could do that every year. I'm sure there's first-person shooter guys out there that would not mind a Halo or a Call of Duty every single year, as long as it was just quality enough to be at least more of the same, if not better. So I have no room to talk there. There are a lot of games that get overabundant of too much of itself, especially in an era when somebody else sees that success and copies it, which is why there's so many Call of Duty clones out there, so many Halo clones out there, and why so many people have been trying to go toe-to-toe with Warcraft.
And that's the other thing that I think we've mentioned as well. Nobody's going to be able to topple Warcraft except for Blizzard themselves. The only way that game is going to go away is if the company does something stupid to irritate its players to the point where they mass quit, or until they release a new and better MMO that drives players to it instead of World of Warcraft.
Yeah, Final Fantasy did fantastic with that.
There's a nail, there's a hammer, there's the hammer on the nail's head. But yes, Project Titan is not so far off anymore. They said they have over 100-man team on that project now. So it is going full steam at this point, but considering how long it took them to get World of Warcraft out, it could still be a couple years off before we really even know much about it.
Hopefully they'll anticipate a larger player base than they did with World of Warcraft so that they can avoid the same issues that they had with its launch.
Well, it has to be said, that was probably the most successful, and yet there is no MMO that gets away with launch day perfect. Everybody has trouble launch day, expansion pack included. WoW's early days was one of the probably more troubling because it took them about 2 weeks to get over that. Because they were expecting like a couple of 100,000 at best, because that was kind of the going thing. They didn't expect to beat out EverQuest at the time. But lo and behold, they soon found themselves in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah. Number 1? I think they had anticipated, what was it, 400,000? They really hadn't anticipated. They just had this, it would be nice if we could get that many. And how many did they have?
2 does sound about right.
Yeah, 2 million, I think.
All I remember is I bought the game, tried to play it, couldn't play for a whole damn week.
Yep.
No, I played the beta for it, but I was playing Final Fantasy XI at the time, and I didn't want to switch MMOs. I have this tendency when I get on an MMO, I kind of stay on it. Lately, it's more because I haven't found one that I think is personally better than World of Warcraft. I mean, sure, there's a lot out there that offer different things, but I think WoW is the king right now. But I did play the beta back when it was in beta, and I was playing on a friend's account, and he ended up ordering the collector's edition. So I didn't get it though. I didn't get it until one of the last patches. I remember leveling up, and the Gates of Ahn'Qiraj being, people were stocking up for that stuff. So that was fairly late in the original game's life cycle. I think I was only playing for maybe six or 7 months before the first expansion came out.
And I didn't get it until probably about, I would think, the same time, but I know you'd been playing it quite a while before then because you'd been trying to get me on it. Matter of fact, the only reason I got on it is that I'd actually bought Mike's GameCube, and there's a huge long story behind all that, but I'd bought Mike's GameCube off of him, and he turned around and used the money on buying me WoW the same weekend. So he tried to get me to get playing it, and I did. I actually played it just about every day, only an hour or two. I wasn't addicted to it, but see, here's my thing, and this is probably the last long spiel you'll get out of me. So I have a thing against the pay-to-play game style. If I buy a game, I want to know that a month from now, if I get bored of it for any reason, I have it to still play again. I don't have to go pay a subscription fee, because that makes me feel like I have to play it, or I'm wasting money. My biggest thing is, and this has already happened, I do have a couple of MMOs. I even have Ultima Online from way back in the day. I hate the idea of owning a game, enjoying a game, and then 5 years later, if you're lucky, the server's shut down. And you can't play it anymore, unless you know somebody with a legal server somewhere. And that drives me nuts. Especially if I've been paying a subscription fee for all that time. So, it's not necessarily a hate against MMOs, because I do like a lot of the ideas they come up with. Matter of fact, in my own mind, I've come up with a couple of MMO ideas myself. But I hate the business model of it.
Well, there's a lot of them that are going free to play. I don't see WoW going that way right now, but I know a lot of them are. The Old Republic is even going free to play, which we I think mentioned last week as well.
Guild Wars 2, you just got to buy the game and it's free forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's a lot of Korean MMOs that you just download. You play.
Yeah.
They're also something that Zynga does. You pay to win. So you have to buy all their little equipment and upgrades and your baggage holds and your character appearance modifiers.
Yeah, and see, I'd rather pay monthly and not have to do that.
Now, if there's a balance behind it where you have the option to, but you don't have to enjoy the game, that's cool with me. But yeah, I played for, I believe, about 2 or 3 months at that time, and then there was a brief period of subscription about a year later, where I played it for about another 2 or 3 months. I have rural internet, and rural internet is not good for MMOs or any kind of online gaming. Something I have to say about the recent one, though, I have not had a single issue with lag, but a couple of times when I've beaten a couple of enemies and I'm picking up some loot and it takes a little while for it to load. That's it. That is wonderful. So that is a lovely feeling.
You would say that overall the gameplay mechanics and stuff have vastly improved from when you played before.
Yes. And it's not entirely my internet because it's the same speed I had back then. And matter of fact, because of some issues trying to upgrade my account and that didn't work out very well, there's actually been some falters and flailing involved there. But yes, the netcode has definitely improved on their end. I have to say it's definitely on their end because it's not on mine.
So you're saying their netcode is so good that it's improving yours?
Yes, basically.